Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Apartment Department. My name is Ann Baum. With me, as always, is my co-host, Chris Johnson. And today we have a wonderful guest, Justin Godwin. He is the Director of Marketing Strategy and Innovation at Cushman Wakefield. Justin, we're so excited to have you here. And I like this story. I like to tell stories about how, our guests come to be. So Justin and I sat at a dinner months ago, half a year ago. We sat next to each other and we were talking, and I was like, you have to come on the podcast one day. And then we were fortunate enough to see each other again last month. And so now here we are.
I know. I feel like it's a long time coming, and I feel very fortunate to be able to be invited as one of your guests. You have a great podcast here, and I'm excited about this conversation.
Thank you so much. Well, we're excited to talk to you because you're obviously doing a lot of great things at Cushman Wakefield. You recently relaunched the structure of your marketing department to really be streamlined, efficient, equitable to all parties, so that the workload is as even as possible. And I was just blown away when I heard you talking about it at Multifamily Strategic Marketing Summit. But we want to talk about something related but different today, and that is everyone's favorite topic of, obviously, you went through this big restructure in order to support the operations teams at Cushman Wakefield and make sure that properties were reaching their occupancy and financial goals. And so what we really want to talk to you about today is, how were you able to find a way to bridge the gap? How are you bridging the gap between marketing and operations to make sure that the properties within, your guys' responsibility are as supported as possible? So we're going to talk about that today. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then we can go ahead and jump in.
Well, I have been in the industry. This makes my 19th year. I'm working on 20 years now. And I've worked from small firms all the way up to the big ones. And I've done everything from working on site. That's where I started out, working as a resident services coordinator. So basically a glorified office manager and pinch hitter for the leasing team. That was a fun job. That was in Baltimore County. And then, over time, worked up into the corporate office, doing a little bit of marketing and then mostly business development before I landed in the role that I'm in now. I've been at Cush Wake. It was previously Pinnacle. Been here for 7 years now doing marketing and just have not looked back. Marketing has always been a passion, but I'm extremely lucky that I can make it a full-time job passion now.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah, I think marketing is interesting because there are so many layers to it. You have to be creative. You have to be in tune with data. You have to be in tune with it's like this wide of a lane that you have to be kind of an expert in. So let's talk today about then marketing, operations, the restructure of your team. How have all of those, come together in terms of how are you seeing marketing really bridging the gap with operations at Cush Wake?
Marketing is an extension of the leasing team. That's what I firmly believe. We are there as support personnel to help make sure that we're getting the traffic and the quality traffic that the property teams need to be able to convert into leases and be successful at the end of the day. They're there to lease apartments, and we are there to make sure that they get the tools and the support they need to do so. So in being able to do that, I feel like we just have to be good neighbors. So not only partners, but just good neighbors and good support personnel. And we have to be proactive, which is what the catalyst was for us to do the restructure earlier this year. We knew that there was an opportunity for us to be more proactive than reactive. And look, we're a much smaller marketing department. Per 100 properties, we have about 2 people per 100 properties as far as direct marketing support. Most everybody else, whether they're a boutique firm or a large firm, they have about 3.5 to 4 times the amount of manpower than what we do for that same 100 properties. So we had to implement a lot of efficiencies through AI and automations and frameworks, which is what I talked about at a recent conference. But we also needed a new team structure to go with that to get a more equitable distribution of our workloads. We did have some properties or some managers marketing managers that had 20, 25 properties. Some of them had over 100 properties, just managing them by themselves. And as you know, as anybody knows, that's just untenable. It's not sustainable. And we
Yeah.
can't bring our best work when we have such limited bandwidth. So you can't be a good neighbor with that. So that's the two parts, is like, how do we create efficiencies so that we can remain competitive even though we're a smaller team, but also how do we restructure our team to support the properties that we have and also build in some extra room for growth.
I think that makes sense, and that's interesting to hear about that distribution because that's the kind of stuff that just happens over time, right? And based on an old structure or regions or, you know, who knows? But yeah, all of a sudden it kinda sneaks up on you, and then you're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that this disparity, existed." So, you guys think of it from a standpoint of your marketing is responsible for driving leads to the properties.
Correct. Yes. So the way that we have always looked at marketing, and it's shifting a little bit more in a different direction, but anything that encourages a prospect to reach out to a property, that's what we consider marketing. So that's your property website, your social media, your online reputation, your ILSs, SEM, SEO. Those are all the influencers that fall under our umbrella. But as soon as that prospect reaches out and makes contact, that's where it becomes part of the site team's responsibilities. Now, we're kind of moving more into that gray area of on-site experience and tour experience where we're taking that on too. And that's part of our new structure. So that's another way that we're trying to be a good neighbor and good partners with our on-site teams to show them, hey, we are here to support you not only in your advertising needs, but also in your on-site tour and prospect experience needs too.
Justin, I just want to reiterate something you said because I feel the same way. You're a good neighbor, you're part of the team. I always tell my on-site teams and anybody I'm working with in operations that I'm their consultant, really. Because at the end of the day, I can't do a good job if they're not doing a good job. And we need to row together and work together. And so I do try to over communicate. And I've always done that with my teams in marketing. So I want to first say that's, in my opinion, how you become a great marketer in this industry is listening to your on-site teams and being a good neighbor to them. But Justin, my question is more geared towards operations and how do those conversations go? How how is marketing perceived? I mean, that's 100 properties for one person is insane, as you know. And you're right, you can't do your best job if you're doing it for 120 communities trying to figure it out. What were those conversations like and how did you approach it?
You can't really start structuring a game plan without knowing where your positives and your negatives are. You got to know what you're doing well and then what are your shortcomings. So to be able to find that out, you have to go and talk to your operators. You have to understand the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then determine what changes you can institute with the tools that you have to be able to better serve those partners. So it was basically kind of going on a listening tour for our operators across the country and getting their feedback, getting their input. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? If you had a magic wand, everybody loves that question. If you had a magic wand, what would you want from marketing today? And a lot of times, what was being given to us in the way of feedback was absolutely achievable if we instituted some changes, if we instituted some automations and some efficiencies that we needed to in our team. So I'm happy to report today that I feel like there's always room for improvement. There's always room for growth. But I do feel like that today we are a much stronger, more agile team and a lot more supportive to our property teams and our local operators than we were a year ago because we listen to what their feedback is. It's a symbiotic relationship between us. And Chris, I'm glad that you mentioned communication. I am a huge, huge advocate of basically over communication. I don't think there's such a thing as being too communicative. And I think that's from things about going from constant updates on what's going on with a project to just acknowledging receipt when you get an email from somebody that's requesting something so that people know that they're being heard, they're being seen, and their request, whether big or small, matters and that you're going to address it. So communication has always been a huge piece for us, even more so today now.
You're communicating across a very large portfolio. Do you utilize any kind of bulk communication tools? Like, are you sending out newsletters on a regular basis to talk about what's new in marketing? Or, like, how are you able to communicate to such a large group often and efficiently?
There's quite a few different tools in our quivers that we have deployed over the years. We've done monthly newsletters or monthly marketing minutes is what we ended up branding it because everything needs to be branded.
Of course, yeah,
But we
we're
did
marketing.
that. We've also a couple of years.
Oh, we've
Yeah.
all done a marketing minute in some time in our career. I've been doing it for 20 years too, Justin. I think anybody at this level has done a marketing minute somewhere, somehow.
I mean, I'm not saying that it was original, but it was definitely a branded thing that we needed to do.
I'm just saying something along those lines. I
It
love it.
needs a
That's very,
logo.
we've
Well, that exactly. I did stop short of a logo, Alice,
Okay.
but nonetheless, so we did that. When I was directly managing marketing for our Northeast and our Carolinas regions, I saw an opportunity to create some efficiency for myself because at that time I had 70 properties by myself, a little more than 70 properties at one point. And I was getting a lot of the same questions over and over again. So what I would typically do is, say, for instance, my favorite topic that I used to address was nudge banners. So pop-up banners on a property website to advertise a concession. We empower our property teams to take control of that and post those banners themselves. Because with 70 properties, if you're constantly doing that for properties, you don't have a whole lot of time for anything else. So when I would get those questions, I would set aside 10 minutes to do a screen share, show them how to do it if they've never done it before, or give them a refresher. And then I realized I was doing this over and over again. So there's got to be a better way to do this. So I recorded a video, and me being the perfectionist that I was or am, I did it highly edited, made sure that it was pretty. I had a great background. I had a suit on and basically like a newscaster explaining how something was done. And I shared it with the executives on what I was doing in my region. And they said at the time, it was J Stack. So J Stack was here, Jennifer Statokas. We all love her. She's amazing. She took one look at it and she says, "This is great. How many can you do? And how quickly can you get them produced?" So it ended up blossoming into basically a vlog series that was basically a way to give tutorials and educate our teams on how to take full advantage of the tools that are at their disposal and to help educate them on things that work and don't work in marketing. So we've done the marketing minute. We've done these videos. We do mass communications by email whenever there's a big blanket thing that we're rolling out that affects everybody. We have an internal SharePoint site because we're a Microsoft house. So we have an internal SharePoint site that is the one-stop place for everything to do with marketing. It's a great FAQ section on there where somebody, if they have a question about where do I go to fix pricing and availability if it's not accurate on my website, or what exactly is PPC and how does it work? You can go through there and search and find answers for anything. So multi-mode communication is always what wins the day.
Okay. No, I think that sounds great. I mean, I think that kind of, but I run into that sometimes. We have a monthly marketing newsletter. We have monthly meetings with our RVPs. But I think sometimes I think about like, oh, should we have communicated about, geo, kind of, we do in the monthly marketing newsletter, but I just kind of always like to hear like, how are people communicating and how often? Because, um, I don't know. It's important. You want people to feel like they know what's going on.
Yeah, the other piece to that is you have to stay in constant contact with your properties and your local operators. I mean, you're their advocates, and they're your advocates as well. So on a monthly or even a bi-monthly basis, getting on the horn with them and joining their operational calls, their leadership calls, and talking about anything that's latest and greatest with marketing, talking about any kind of new initiatives that are being rolled out or what you guys are thinking about in marketing. And that helps them take ownership in the process too, because I found that whenever you're instituting some kind of new policy, you're rolling out a new program or platform, getting their buy-in and their having them take ownership earlier in the process makes the rollout and the adoption a lot easier and a lot smoother too, because you've gotten their buy-in and they believe in it, and they've seen what the process has been from soup to nuts. So that's another way. You just got to keep constant contact with everybody.
Justin, can I roll that into operational? Because that's how I communicate when I'm trying to get buy off for a program I'm looking at for the rest of operations. I do the exact same thing and get them to buy off on it and get their ideas. Have you tried that going the other way? Because I think it works both ways, and that's helped me be successful as well.
It's a two-way street. So yes, 100%. We not only let me give you this example. So I've had a product in mind that about 2 years ago that I was like, oh, this is going to solve the world's problems when it comes to marketing and things to do on site with marketing as well. And I thought it was just the silver bullet that most of our properties needed. So when I got people involved in the process, the end users involved in it, I quickly understood that even though I had experience working on site, that was 15 years ago, and the landscape has changed a lot. So there are things that they're more attuned to that just didn't exist at that point, and they were able to point out some shortcomings of that particular product and service. So it helped me pivot and be a little bit smarter. We still wanted to get to that end goal, but it ended up not being that particular product or service. So we ended up going with something else. And that has happened vice versa too, where operators have looped us in and on certain projects that they're saying, this is the problem that we have. This is the solution that we are really working on. A lot of times when we're brought in the beta testing mode, and we're basically told, here, you've got access, go break it, give us feedback. And I kind of love that process. I worked with one of our vendor partners when I was working on site. There was a great new, I won't mention their name, but there was a great new software that was kind of like a resident portal. And we were one of the first ones to launch it outside of the New York City area. And I was working in a suburb of DC. And I loved it, believed in it. Our residents loved it, but there was a lot of efficiencies and a lot of updates that they can make to just make it better. And, I ended up getting a trip paid up to New York to sit with the CEO of the company and share my laundry list of things that I said, this could probably be better. Have you thought about this? Have you looked at that? So that process is a lot of fun to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's that's such a big thing too right now, like, supplier, vendor, operator partnerships. I bet they were more than happy to have you go up and give feedback. I want to go back to, if you're willing and able to talk about some of the positive and negative feedback that you got when you went on your listening tour. I think our listeners would be really interested to hear what was going well, but what wasn't going so well as well that you decided to change.
I'll focus on the negative first, and that was we needed to be more proactive than reactive. And I think a lot of marketing departments, whether you're small like ours or an even larger juggernaut of a marketing team, we sometimes lose focus on the need to be more proactive and reach out to our operators to say, hey, there's a problem here or there's something on the horizon before they reach out to us. So that was probably one of the biggest pieces of feedback. And we kind of knew that that was going to be one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we got going into this, but it just reaffirmed that. So getting that feedback and figuring out a way that we could restructure the team and implement some additional efficiencies so that we could be more efficient and be more proactive was paramount. As far as positive feedback, a lot of the positive feedback that we got is that you guys know your stuff. You guys are very efficient. If we come to you with a problem, if we say that we need you to do a deep dive in marketing, you guys are really good partners with us because you don't just look at your traffic numbers and call it a day and say, looks like you've got enough traffic. Have a nice day. You guys actually dig in and you look at conversion data. You look at how the website's performing. You look at what's going on site. How many open positions do they have on the leasing team? What's the exposure? What's the occupancy trend? How is your pricing relative to your comps in the local area? Why are people deciding not to rent and why are people deciding not to renew? We would take a lot of that information and put it in one place, and it created a more holistic view of what's going on at the property rather than just taking a myopic view of just marketing. So that was the positive feedback that we got most commonly, which was you guys are really good partners and you do play outside of your sandbox, and it's in a good way, and it's a very supportive way.
And I think that's something that we've talked a lot about. I do a monthly KPI at my company for marketing. Nobody ever asked me for it. I just gave them the numbers. And we look at website, we use Knock right now. We look at Knock, we look at social media, what's working, what isn't, just from a holistic, we do it in-house. On top of how much traffic have you gotten? On top of, I'm also doing pricing. So we can kind of look at all of it and say, okay, now we can actually get a view of what is going on top of the fact that I try to talk to the regionals at least twice a week on what's going on with their properties, good or bad. And that just goes back to the communication piece. Now I'm a much smaller firm, easier to talk to the regionals than when you have, 500 properties out there. But it is important to have those conversations, jump on the calls and show the data because when you take it from a view like that, where you are considering everything that's going on, what's going on the website, what's going on in Knock or whatever CRM you happen to be using, I think it does give you a little bit more, you're more transparent, one, and two, it gives you a seat at the table because you're coming in with data. And it's not just, oh, you got 10 pieces of traffic, great.
Yeah, and coming in with that data builds a lot of trust. And that's critical with any kind of relationship, whether it's at work or in personal life. You've got to have that trust. And going to what you were saying, making those connections with those properties and those property teams, that's really important to establish a really good relationship and also build that trust. What I found is that we tend to give a lot of attention and have a lot of conversations with the properties that are either screaming the loudest or they're really in crisis. Like their occupancy is really slipping and they're in a world of hurt and they're trying to dig themselves out of a hole. But sometimes when we do that, we forget about those properties that are coasting along. They're doing really well. So what I would do when I was directly managing the marketing is I would set aside one day out of every week, and I would set aside about 30 minutes, and I would just pick up the phone and call a random property that I had not heard from. I had not seen anything from them in quite some time other than my regular reporting, and just connect with them and say, hey, just want to let you know that I'm here. How are you doing? How are things going? I haven't seen much come up. It looks like your occupancy is good, but what do you need from me? How can I best support you? And more than 9 times out of 10, I would say 99 times out of 100, A, the person would be flabbergasted, but B, they would not have anything but positive things to say. On the rare occasion, they might say, you know what, I was meaning to reach out to you and ask you about X, Y, or Z. But that really instilled a lot of respect and trust in both directions for both myself, for the property manager, and the property manager for me. And I did the same thing with regional managers too. Just pick up the phone or send them a quick chat. If you don't have time to get on the phone, send them a quick chat and say, hey, checking in. How are you doing? What can I do to best support you?
I have a running joke with one of the regionals whenever there's something going on at her property. And the first thing I always tell her is, what do you need from me? What do you want marketing to do to help you in this situation? Whatever it is, good, bad, or indifferent. And she always laughs and she tells her team, marketing's always there. They're ready to jump because I've established that. And they know that we will, if it really is a quality issue on the traffic or whatever, we'll look into it. So just, it's those little pieces, I think, that make such a big difference in our industry and can really elevate the marketing team. And it's pretty simple stuff.
It is.
If you set aside the time like you did.
And we were taking that same approach and just saying, well, what do you need for marketing? How can we best support you? Today, with all the changes that we've instituted, we're now equipped with the tools and the additional bandwidth to go to them and say, hey, I noticed this. Here's what we're going to do to support you. Instead of asking them, how can I support you? We're going to them and saying, this is what we should do without them having to prompt us.
Without it being, because that's what I found when it becomes a reactive situation. You're already 2, 3, 4 weeks behind the ball, and then there's almost, it's minimal trust in those situations. Because it's like frantic is not the right word, but it's like a frantic situation, and it feels like then there can't be a misstep because you're already in a dire situation and the stakes feel a lot higher. So I love the idea of the proactive. So when you all now are going to properties with, here's what we're going to do, what are some of those suggestions? What does that look like?
Well, it starts with data. Data driven company. And we're providing intensive monthly reporting. And part of that reporting is not us just pulling reports all into which is actually a great feature that we have now. We pull all of our data into one centralized dashboard, which is so much more efficient than what we were doing this time last year. But we're not just regurgitating data or pulling data from somewhere and just slinging a report to somebody by email and saying, here's your report, have a nice day. That's not how you partner with somebody. So we have to pull in what our observations are, what our recommendations are. Look, we're the marketing experts. So yeah, we can give them data all day long on what the initial sessions are on Google, or what the engagement rate is on the property website, or what the click-through rate was on your pay-per-click campaign. But if you're not the marketing expert, you probably don't know exactly what all that means and what you should be measuring yourselves against. So you have to provide the observations along with that. The good and the bad observations, but also the recommendations on what you can do to improve if there is room for improvement based on, or need for improvement, I should say, based on, shifting packages up and down related to occupancy. So not only are we looking for solutions to try to drive traffic, but if a property is doing exceptionally well, we're looking for opportunities to pull back on marketing if we can, so that we can provide some cost savings to our clients.
We do the same thing. I market per property and I go up and down every month, depending on what the numbers are showing me. Justin, I did have a question on that because I personally have gotten away from diving deep on these metrics for a lot of the members in the organization, just because it's a lot to take in. There's a lot of acronyms. It's a lot of data. And I've kind of simplified my approach to, hey, here's what we are seeing. I just give them the recommendations without all the stuff. Or of course I have it, but I don't throw it in their face and I don't put it into a PDF. Have you heard about that at all? Or do your teams love seeing it? Because it's gone both ways. I think it's good to provide it, but also sometimes it's overwhelming when you get a report that says, oh, here's the impressions, here's the engagement rate. Even if you define it for them, it's a lot. It's a lot for a non-marketer.
And now, a message from our sponsor, Flamingo. Every multifamily marketer wants to know what the next big thing will be. At the apartment department, we think that resident retention is the next big thing, which is why we're excited to have Flamingo as our podcast sponsor. Flamingo, founded by Jude Chai, is an all-in-one resident retention platform used by some of the top-performing communities in the country. And here's a fun little secret. If you see a community with 300 plus online reviews and 65% plus retention, there's a good chance they're using Flamingo. From automated renewal management and resident events to amenity bookings and even an AI concierge, Flamingo brings everything together in one sleek app that residents actually use. Learn more at getflamingo.com.
There have been several occasions where we've received the feedback and that it's data overload. It's, analysis paralysis. However, we still provide the data and we tell them, if you want to dive into the data to get proof behind what we're putting forth in our recommendations, it's here. And I don't want you to have to ask me for it. I want to give it to you right out of the gate. But what we're going to do is we're going to give you the recommendations. We're going to give you the why, which is what I personally always want. I want to understand why somebody is recommending something to me. And then I want to also know that there is data to back up that decision. So those three key components have to be involved.
Yeah, makes sense.
That makes sense. And you might too, I don't know exactly what your structure is, but like in our case, we have multiple people that have to see the recommendations in order to approve it. And so that becomes maybe one of those people just wants a bullet pointed list, but the other person wants, the multiple pages of data. And so I like what you're saying. It's like you're providing something for everyone that might be in that decision-making chain that might exist within for that particular property.
Yeah, it makes sense. Consume how you want to consume.
Correct. And we're amiable to whatever somebody might want. So if it is overkill and you don't want to go that route, then by all means, we can customize whatever you need. But I don't want to say that we manage to the lowest common denominator. I would say that we are managing to the most common request. And we know that the two most common requests when it comes to observations and recommendations is I want all the data and I want the why, where somebody else might just say, I want you to tell me what I need to do and I'll approve it for you. We give them both. So we give them all the data and we give them a long report that contains all of our thoughts and everything along with that data, but we send it in an email that summarizes everything and gives bullet points on this is what we're recommending. And they can take, they could choose your own adventure basically from there.
Are you
Options.
including observations about, I know you said the new team structures maybe leaning more into like tour experience and stuff, but are the metrics that you're sending also including opportunities where maybe conversion rates in the leasing funnel could be improved as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason being is because our department's numbers are greatly influenced by how well the team is managing the lead traffic that they get.
Yeah.
So it is critically important that if I give nothing else, I want to give our traffic numbers, but I'm also going to give our conversion numbers because I can drive traffic all day long to a property. But if I have a property team that's just not answering the phone, they're not following up, they're not even answering the initial calls, returning, or anything like that, then I need to make sure that they know that we can see that and that the folks that are in charge of that team also know about it as well. Again, it goes back to that two-way relationship, and it's a two-way street for us. So if our team is not doing well with driving lead traffic, I expect them to let me know that. I should know that. I mean, if I'm paying attention and doing my job, I should know that. But I expect them to come to me on feedback on where I can do better for them. And I know that most of them expect us to do the same for them as well in return.
Industry standard, we still say 30 to 33%. I have been fighting at my company to go higher because I feel like today, if somebody's walking in the door, they have more information and they're comparing less these days. How do you both feel about maybe raising that number that has always tended to be in that 30 to 35%?
Ours is higher. Our app
I love that.
our tour to app,
Yeah, 2.5.
our expectations higher. But of course, I'll send it to you later because of course I'm not remembering exactly what it is. But
That's great. I think it should be higher. I think we need to push our teams.
I agree. I think it should be higher as well. That is not a metric that we track. We pay more attention to prospects to leases.
Mm.
The reason being is that to your point, I think that yes, it should be pushed a little bit harder, but I think that are some variables that are just outside of our ability to control, and that's like the approval process. So ever since COVID, we're still, I mean, pre-COVID, we were hoping to convert at least 75% plus of all applications into an actual lease or an approval, where today that's gone down quite a bit. So it's still our goal internally, and we've instituted some tools to kind of help out with that. But those tools have also been a double-edged sword. Like there's a lot of programs out there that can catch fraudulent pay stubs and forged documentation. And what is that doing? It's helping us make sure that we're curbing the potential effect of having a non-paying resident moving in, but it's also tamping down our approvals as well. So
I agree with you. I look at it, if they get the application, they get the application. We can't control if it gets denied. And by the way, I hope it gets denied if they've done something with their pay stub or they don't have the right background or whatever, because we don't want non-paying residents. That doesn't do us any good. Occupancy on paper doesn't do any good if they're not paying you. I just think when those people come in the door, I'm trying to push our teams, and we are going to start to inch it up just a little bit to go from, 30% to let's say 40 or
Christian,
something along those lines.
you make an excellent point about the information that prospects have and that they've armed themselves with when they come in the door. I believe that even before COVID, our prospects have so much information at their fingertips that if they're stepping foot on your property, they are literally there to kick the tires and make sure that what they've seen in your digital presence carries through to your physical presence. It is your lease to lose.
Right. And that's where I think that that's interesting because then that tour to app conversion rate being lower than benchmark is to me an indication of a disconnect. Like a lot of people will be like, well, then it was a bad tour. But to me, it's an indication there's a disconnect between how we're advertising the property and what the actual feeling is when someone gets to the property.
There's a lot of value and often a missed opportunity in apartment marketing where the common thread from the digital experience to the on-site experience is just broken. The moment that somebody reaches out and makes contact by phone or email or steps foot on the property, what we've sold them online on our beautiful websites or in our glossy
Yep.
photos is a completely different experience than what they're getting when they reach out to the property. Now, I'm not saying that that's consistent across every property. That
No,
is
of
by no
course. Yeah.
means what I'm saying, but it's a common issue across the industry. We have to bridge that divide and we have to pull that common thread to be able to, number one, instill trust in what we're selling. If a prospect sees that we're selling a Cadillac online and then they see that in person, it's a Cadillac as well, and the team are Cadillac drivers, then it's going to instill that trust and they're going to be more likely to convert into an actual application. When you have that disconnect, you've lost the lease.
This goes
Yep.
back to our unit marketing that we were just talking about, because
Yep.
then you can show them the actual units. We just did something with Izzy from LCP Media on unit level marketing. It's pretty, that's the future, really. It's the now.
Yeah.
It is
To
the
be
now.
able to be able to tell. And yeah, you can feel that disconnect. I think it's interesting too, because we're talking so much about streamlining. But then what I'm kind of realizing too is like there's such a need, we're talking about connection and over communication. There is such a need for us as marketers to go to these properties and feel them I mean, it sounds weird, but like, see them and feel them. And like an example that I have from a few months ago, I don't even know anymore, but like I went to a property and I followed the Apple Maps directions and it took me to like some weird side parking lot. It didn't take me to the main entrance, and I was like, I never would have known this if I hadn't come out to the property. And so it's just strange. Again, I think a lot of times when we're thinking about streamlining and being efficient, in my mind, it's almost then to make time for more of this, like, it's like the AI plus human, right? Like streamline equals more in-person time or more property visits, or I don't know. I'm not explaining it well, but it's just interesting. I'm realizing just constantly how important that's part of bridging the divide.
It is. And one last thing that I'll add here is that we've implemented a lot of products and services that help make our properties teams' lives a little bit easier to manage as far as it comes to the marketing services, managing your social presence, your online reputation, and stuff like that. But what we have found is that we have not told them or given them direction on what they should do with that reclaimed time. And you would think that maybe that's just second nature. Oh, I've got an extra, 30 minutes in my day because I'm using these tools. I can apply this to, touring or doing, something else in my. That's not consistently happening. And I remember distinctly that there was an operator that I had a discussion with a year and a half or 2 years ago. And she said, Justin, you guys are putting together some fantastic tools and we're doing the same in our company. But what I found is that our leasing teams are not applying that time savings to actually doing something productive. And she was not implying that her team was lazy. It's
Yeah.
just she was implying that there's an opportunity that to really direct the team on what they can do with those time savings.
That's a very interesting. No, I think that's a great point. I had another question for you, and of course, it's totally gone now. Chris, do you have
Well,
a
I have a
question?
question for y'all, if you don't
Oh,
mind me
good.
turning the tables.
Yeah, go
Yeah, we
ahead.
like when that happens.
So we were talking about the future, and Chris, you were saying the future is now when it comes to unit level tours. So unrelated to that, but also talking about the future, centralization. Everybody's favorite topic over the past 3 years until AI, really kind of ruled the headlines. But I would love to know your take on centralization, what your thoughts on that are, and if you feel like it has improved the resident experience.
That is not something I can speak on, um, from a company standpoint. So that falls outside of my department. So I don't feel comfortable talking about that topic. But Chris, what do you think?
Well, I answer it this way, Justin. We don't centralize at our company right now. Okay. But I think like everywhere else, it's been a topic of discussion. And I think in speaking with other people, I think there are some areas where centralization makes sense and can work. I think in some other areas, centralization is not going to work. I can't speak on it because we haven't done it, but I can tell you, I do think that there is something valuable about having somebody at the property when you're living there and spending as much money as you're spending on these properties, to have a voice, to have somebody when you show up, whether you're a prospect or a resident, to help you. I think there is something to be said for that. I don't think that centralization has to necessarily go away. You know, Justin, you've been doing this as long as I have. We played this game in the early 2000s and then we went away from it and now we're coming back. And Ann and I have talked about this on the pod a lot. I think our trends go up and down. Technology has certainly helped the idea of centralization. I'm giving you kind of a long answer here. So I don't know. I know some companies tried it and they've actually pulled away from it. I think it just totally depends on your market and your company in general and how you are actually staffed and what you're trying to accomplish. I think in some markets, if you're in a very dense market like New York, let's say New York, DC, where it actually works, you can have somebody that floats around and get there within 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, because you have the means to do so. It probably makes sense for some of those properties if they're smaller. Uh, you know, a really nice luxury apartment in Dallas, I don't know if it makes that much sense. I think, we're kind of spread out. It doesn't really work to have somebody kind of bounce around and do that. And I think there is some human touch that still needs to be there. I mean, that's my take. Um, and being a renter by choice for many years of my life, I definitely liked having somebody on staff. I just called for my friend here whose mom's thinking about moving because I heard that they were centralized and they weren't. They have people on staff, but I wanted to ask for her because I think it was important. So I gave you a very long answer. I'd love to hear what you think. I think it has its place, but I don't know if we're ready to mainstream it.
My very short answer would be there are positives and negatives about it. And I think that are some efficiencies that can be gained from it from a business standpoint that are cost savings as well. However, I agree wholeheartedly. You can't take the human element out of it because we're in a business where you have to have that personal touch. You have to have that involvement. It doesn't matter what generation you're from. You want to have a positive interaction with a person if you're in a situation that really warrants having a personal situation or a personal interaction. The reason why I bring it up is I was a lifelong renter by choice as well up until about a year ago. And I've lived at many properties that did not have centralization, but the last one that I lived at, we didn't have centralization at that one. Not managed by my company, but they instituted centralization shortly after COVID, and the resident experience was completely night and day. So I think it was kind of a cautionary tale for me on what not to do with centralization and how to navigate it. If and when we started putting some of these thoughts to paper and paper into action.
I just have a little side note on this because centralization is related to AI, and there was something that I had a conversation. I had this conversation recently, just last week. AI is great, but a lot of people are doing it now, and now a lot of the AI is the same, and so we've really gotten away from even using AI to its capacity. And we're looking at AI now, and I love AI. I've been a big believer and I was an early adopter of it a few years ago at another firm. But now that I can start over from scratch as we look into it at my firm now, I'm really going to look at these automation emails that go out. And I really do want to spend the time up front to make them different because I think people can understand, and we still need it. Speed the lead still matters. The data is there. If you respond to somebody faster, they're more likely to call you back. And I agree with all of it. But can't we use AI? It's getting smarter. Can't we be smarter with the AI that we're using if everybody is using it? I'm just going to throw that out there. And that kind of goes to our future question, Justin and Ann, how we like to end the pod, because there's so much value to it. I love it so much. I'm so passionate about it. I think it can be, and some of the stuff that AI has branched out to in our industry, I think is fantastic. So I'm a believer of it. I like to do things different. And if everybody's answering the same, then you're not being different anymore. So that's my little 2 cents on that.
I agree with the fact that the sky's the limit on AI. And I think that it's far more capable of a customized experience for our prospects and our residents and even for our processes than what we leverage it for today.
But it's an undertaking, especially, I mean, I'm a smaller firm. It's way easier for me to do it. Don't get me wrong to all the listeners out there that have more than I do, but I do think there's an opportunity there when you look at it that if you were to go to 5 communities and they all had it, your response would probably be about the same.
Yeah,
Yes,
you're right.
it would be better than not responding at all. By 100, by a million times, I take it all day long. But how can we be a little bit different, you know?
It's funny you bring that up because just recently, Lisa Trozine, I think we all know her.
Yeah, this is what I'm referencing. It's the same thing because we had
Same
a
message.
discussion that post she put up, and
Yeah.
it had a whole discussion in my office about it when we saw it.
Yeah,
And definitely stealing that from her.
the
It's not an
the
original idea.
And I think in that situation, so if anybody's listening and they're not aware, Alicia Trozine went and shopped a handful of properties in the same area, and she ended up getting automatic replies from these CRMs that were identical, word for word. So I think that that's the cautionary tale that just because you get a system that has a default setting doesn't mean that it should remain the default. You should go in and customize it to your property or to your needs. And I think that we can do a better job as an industry of leveraging that. And then layering in AI in the same way, in that you can take full advantage of AI to create a better experience for not only yourself, but your prospects and your residents, and your clients for that matter. But you have to leverage it in a way that's meaningful and that gives a good experience and is actually solving a problem instead of creating one.
Agree. And she's awesome, by the way, for those of you who don't follow. She has some ideas out there that really make you think.
Hot takes. That's like her
I love her hot takes.
hot take. I know. I always like hot take. Here it comes. What are we gonna? I think it's interesting, and I'm gonna do my future thing, Chris. I'm just because I've been thinking. I think about this sometimes, like the whole process. Okay, the whole process is not. And it feels antiquated. Someone fills out a form. They send it to our CRM. An automated reply comes back. Here's the units that are available. But like they already saw the units that were available on the aisle. So, like, we're telling them information that they probably already know, but we're asking them to send us a request for information they've already seen. So, there's already friction there. And then, depending on like their move in date, the unit that they saw might not even be available because we can't predict if someone's going to move out or not. And so now we've got these scenarios of like, well, when are you moving? Oh, in 3 months. Well, I can't tell you what's available because we only have a 60-day, look ahead window. That's not the right word, but you guys know what I'm talking about because we can't predict if a resident is going to be out of that unit or not. And so I think, I don't know. I don't have an answer for like, then how would you do this better or how could it be more streamlined? But there has to be a way where that entire process is just cleaner in general.
I feel like that step one is go into your community with blinders on and act like you're a prospect and do the application process. Go through the steps yourself. You can clear out the information afterwards. It's fine.
Yeah.
But go through the process. Look, when you're sitting down doing your taxes and you had to fill out form after form, that's got your name, your address, your social security numbers. Like I just gave you this information on something else. It's infuriating. So why wouldn't our prospects be in the same kind of, emotional state of having to submit the same information or being fed the same information that they already know? And I think the way to identify that is put ourselves in our prospect shoes. A lot of times we don't do that.
Right, because we don't think about I always laugh. I'm like, yeah, like, "Oh, I'm interested in this property." "Thank you. What kind of bedroom would you like?" And I'm like, "I don't what is that even the appropriate answer for, like,
Yeah.
the inquiry that has just occurred?" And again, I'm not saying that I have, like, a better I think about that sometimes, like, or it's like when you go to a website and a business still wants you to fill out a form to get a quote. I'm like, why would I do that?
I know.
Like, don't
Stop
make
checking a box. And how about establish a good relationship with a potential customer?
yeah, make it a process. So, but Justin, I think that's a really good point is like the way that we can fix that is to go through the entire process and think about like where does this make sense and not make sense? Again, like if someone is filling out a form on ILS on a specific unit, then the response they get back should be about that unit, not, I don't know. There are ways, but anyway, Justin, what's the future?
I mean, I feel like as a stereotypical answer at this point in a one-string banjo, it's AI. But I think the future around AI, as I just talked about, it's only going to be as bright or as dim as what we decide to leverage of it and how we deploy it.
No, I think that's fair. I think the future is shifting from like individual process adoption to overall systems overhaul. How can AI fit into our entire corporate systems and change the way that we're doing work? Chris, any other future hot takes?
No, I think Justin hit it perfectly on the AI. This was a great conversation, Justin. Thank
Yeah.
you for bringing your years of experience on the pod and just having a discussion with us. Super valuable. As Anne likes to say, and I copy her all the time, because in marketing, I never like to reinvent the wheel. Light bulbs have gone off on how we can be better based on what you said today. And anytime we can end a podcast like that, we are in a much better spot. So we appreciate you. Thank you for coming on.
Ann and Chris, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope we can do it again.
Oh, yeah. Open invitation anytime. This was great. The time went by way faster than we thought it would. So, Justin, thank you so much. Thank you to our producer, Carlos. Thank you to our sponsor, Flamingo. And until next time, this has been the Apartment Department.